We're going to take a deep dive into why you must do more than vote in this election with Catherine Engelbrecht of True the Vote on this episode of United Patriots Uprising with Gary Benford. I'm your host, Gary Benford. Thanks for joining us. This podcast is available at radioinfluence.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can also find the video version at Rumble and on YouTube. And in all cases, please click that subscribe button so you can get all the episodes. You know, voting is very important. It's something we must do. But in this upcoming election, we need to do more than vote. We need to get involved. We really need to get involved if we want to retain our liberty and if we want to retain our freedom. So we have somebody here that's going to tell us how to do it and why we better do it. So are you ready? Well, let's get into it. Well, I know you're really waiting for this one, everybody, because everybody that I know who cares about we the people are very concerned about this election and very concerned about election integrity. And along those lines, we have somebody here who has been involved in this for a long, long time, and she has a lot to say. So I welcome to the show the founder of True the Vote, Catherine Engelbrecht. How are you, Catherine?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Gary.
And Catherine, thanks for coming on. And let's start with what is True the Vote? Why was there a need for True the Vote? And how did you get involved in starting True the Vote?
Sure. True the Vote is a citizen-led effort to engage in the electoral process. It's just fundamentally getting citizens, voters, eyes on so that we understand how our votes are being cast and counted and can contribute in a way that overall leads to a positive outcome that people feel confident and assured that our election process is conducted with integrity. And sadly, that's not where we are today. But True the Vote is committed to improving the current situation. I started True the Vote back in 2009 by accident. It was just known in my community, Harris County, which was at the time, it's Houston, Texas, the second largest voting bloc in the country at the time. And there was a need for volunteers to work at the polls. And so a small group of us went. Most of us had awesome experiences. Some of us had problems. The problems and concerns that we saw at the polls were similar, person to person. And that really encouraged us to say, this is what happens when people are watching. What happens when there's no one there? And what can we learn about the problems that we saw? How can we work towards solving those problems? And frankly, always believed that the problems would be identified. We would bring forward proof and solutions, and certainly our elected would work towards those solutions or some solution. That's just for the past decade. Really, it's been a slow go, and it all culminated in 2020 when, for the first time, the majority of Americans' eyes were opened about the failures of our electoral process. And now we find ourselves in the midst of another brewing storm. 2020 storm was the fog of COVID and all the ways in which our election process was changed permanently. Now we are seeing, with those changes having been normalized, like mass mail out of ballots and drop boxes and the like, now we are seeing the added layer of engineered chaos coming from open borders and what it means to see non-citizens added to the rolls. So there are things that citizens can and should be doing, and that's to prevent any undue problem. And that is what we're focused on, is things that citizens can do, and have several projects running right now where people can get involved.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, I would say when you started this, I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, your mindset was, oh, this is a great, great venture that I'm getting involved with. And I'm sure the legislatures and the American people and the powers that be, because we definitely want free elections, fair elections, that everybody is going to get on board and help me, and this is just going to snowball around the country, and everybody is just going to be so happy to let's clean up the rolls, get the dead people off, get the cats and dogs off, and the stuffed animals and everything, and let's just get America. We get a free and fair election. And what happened? Oh boy.
Oh, my word. Right. What happened to us was we realized that we had walked onto a political minefield and had no expectation.
Yeah.
I didn't have a political bone in my body other than I routinely voted, but I had no understanding of this nexus around voting being used by both parties in a way that sets up this perpetual victim mentality, and elections aren't intended to be perpetually broken. Should not be. I mean, my word, if we're talking about colonizing Mars, we should be able to register people accurately. The data exists, the technology exists. What is lacking is the political will, and the only way we're going to correct that, and then that's just one of 1,000 front war. Our voter rolls are a problem. It's one of many, but it's something that citizens can be involved with, and the only way we're going to get back to elections that we can be confident about is if citizens demand it of their government, because the current paradigm and the current leadership is not going to fix this. The whole victim mentality and always chasing this problem and rattling sabers about it, that works, that plays. That fear is useful for fundraising and all manner of things, and certainly for fixing elections. The one thing they can't stop, though, is if citizens just draw the line and say enough is enough. We're going to look for ourselves. We're going to demand answers, and we expect you to be accountable to solving these problems with us. And that's what we're pushing for.
Do you think citizens are really starting to catch on, Catherine? The reason I ask is because we've known about what's been going on for quite a while now, but you hear all the mainstream media and all the talking heads and a lot of people on the left and even some on the right saying, no, as Obama said, not even a smidgen of, and you're wondering, okay, we're going to take all these cases to court in Arizona and Michigan, all these states, and the courts won't hear it. Well, why won't they hear it? If they hear it, it would put it to bed. If there's no evidence, if Michael Liddell is wrong, if Joe Von Hutton Pulitzer is wrong, if Dan Schultz is wrong, if you're wrong, hey, show us what you have, let the court look at it. And if you don't have anything, it would be over. Yet no court will take it. Do you think the people are catching on that there's something amiss here?
I really do. And it's come in waves. For a long time. First, the early wave, the wave I was a part of initially was back, 2009, 2010, where we began seeing problems. And our first thought was, okay, if we present these problems to our elected officials, they will solve them. We've spent the last 10 plus years learning the hard way that, you may get a victory here and then, but the wholesale reform that needs to take place isn't going to happen. And I saw the writing on the wall a long time ago. It isn't going to happen until we get so close. So we're staring directly into the abyss, and there's no choice. Either it's going to crack in half, or citizens are going to help step in and save it. And it may crack in half anyway, but citizens have to be aware of what's happening so that they are positioned to stand in that gap. We have allowed our process to erode for so long, for generations. This has been a well-laid trap that has been advanced inch by inch, and now we are where we are. And so what you saw in the immediate aftermath of 2020 was another wave of people who knew something was wrong, but they couldn't quite put their finger on it, and they approached it much like I did back in 2010, thinking, well, I'm going to apply common sense, and everybody sort of picked their area, and it just happens organically. And then they chased down that path. And what they met along the way were all of the roadblocks and speed bumps that have been put in through election code and through the courts that resulted in, not a whole lot of advancement, but it certainly was useful in continuing to keep the debate alive, because the question that you asked is a good question. if we know these things are problems, why can't we just talk about them and prove them either up or down, but at least hear us out? And the fact that the cases weren't even heard is troubling. Now, the cases back in 2020, the 61 some odd cases, weren't heard because they were based around an idea that if you could present a statistical problem, or if you could point to a breakdown in process, that would be sufficient in the courts. But the courts don't care about that. The courts and the precedent is not there for that. What the courts want to see is, show me where an election outcome was altered because of broken process. And to do that, you have to have data to support it. And in 2020, hard lesson that many people learned was that the data was not there. It's why True the Vote took a slightly different path in proving out the things that we took on, using cell phone data, looking at election management software. But this is as I say, it's a 1,000-front war, and we need all hands on deck. But at the foundational level of any effort, it takes the momentum that can be provided only by our citizenry, our fellow countrymen who say, we care enough to stay the course here and to shore up this process so that it let the best man or woman win. Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. Just let it be a fair process. And you can only get back to that. Government will not do it by itself. The only way we do this is by citizens saying, I'm going to vote this year, and I'm going to serve, and I'm going to get plugged into my local election and figure it out. And then we can see change quickly. It will happen fast, but we have got to build critical mass from the citizens.
Yeah, I hear you. Catherine, you said that the courts said the data wasn't there. I thought the data was there. I saw some of it. I thought it was there in several states, particularly in Arizona. When you say the data wasn't there, are you saying there wasn't enough data, or it wasn't able to be presented, or they just didn't care, or they didn't think it was enough? And if it happened there, why didn't it Michigan and Pennsylvania and Virginia, and we can go on and on and on.
Yeah, what many of the suits were focused on back then was the statistical problems of knowing certain failures. I mean, I'm in my head, I'm going to Arizona of 2022, and of course that case is still moving forward, and I very much hope that Kurt Olson and his team are going to be able to get that in front of the Supreme Court, because that 2022 case, I think, reflects a lot of lessons learned coming out of 2020. But what I mean by the data wasn't there is, what a court wants to hear is not just process problems or the statistical possibility that a problem of, for example, printers breaking down, or not having chain of custody, or not having accurate equipment, or the ability to prove that there was a problem with the code that the software in the machines was problematic. All of those things are smoke. And it's important smoke for sure, but the fire that the court wants to see is the completion of that equation, that this happened and this happened and this happened. Therefore, these specific voters cast ineligible votes, or their votes were stolen from them, or their voices were silenced through the dilution of their votes, and therefore the election was invalid. And you have to be able to, it's a very meticulous process. You were, and believe me when I tell you, I mean, I started True the Vote in as I say, in 2009. Prior to that, I'd run a company for 16 years in the oil and gas industry, had never been in court. Since starting True the Vote, I've never been out of court. I sadly, I know this space all too well. What's going to happen when you get to court is they're going to say, okay, in short, okay, I get it. The process is a mess. Nobody likes that. But in court, we have to prove that that specific votes of specific voters were invalid. And if you can't do that, then the court's going to say you don't have standing, or there's no basis. And that's what happened in 2020. And it wasn't that the cases were bad. The fact is, after an election, you have precious few days that you can try to aggregate as much as you can and see, the dust was needed to settle. I'll give you a stat that's shocking. bearing in mind that you had to be able to prove who voted that was ineligible in 2020. You had to be able to prove that in court for these cases to move forward. And think about the timeline, right? Election was in November. These cases were dropping end of November, December, January 6th. It was said and done. It was a fight to the finish all the way through the end. As of March 1st, 2021, only 11 states had posted their final 2020 census so that groups like ours and others could actually see who voted. Up until then, you could call them, which I did many times to many states, and the one that always sticks in my mind is talking with Pennsylvania, and the people on the other end of the phone saying, we're not going to release that data. We don't know who voted yet. We won't know for another 6 weeks. This was in January having that conversation. We won't know for another 6 weeks. So how can they certify the election? So we've made massive strides in understanding how to fight on this battlefield, but it's not as it seems, because it's so obvious that common sense is just gone, but it's not enough. It's not enough. You've got to be able to prove it in a different way in court. It's different through the legislature, and certainly it's different in the court of public opinion. And there we are winning. The majority of Americans, doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, now are quick to say something's wrong with our elections. And that is a huge step forward.
I hear you. Now, before we talk about what True the Vote does and how people can get involved, let's talk about two major issues that you are sounding the alarm about. The first one is the effect of the illegal aliens coming across the open border. So people, let them in. They're trying to escape communist countries. They're just coming here to work. They'll never be allowed to vote. Let's talk about that one.
Right. Well, I mean, that's simply not true. Although that is the rank and file talking point of the left right now is, well, it's illegal, so they wouldn't do it. Well, okay, time out. The whole thing's illegal. Open borders is illegal. The whole thing. Can we not look in our rear view mirror long enough to understand that illegalities have reigned supreme in this country easily for the last 4 years, certainly in the space of elections. The fraud has been institutionalized. And when I referred earlier to a plan that's been played out inch by inch, this non-citizen or alien voting, as it's called in U.S. code, alien voting, this has been engineered for this moment. All the social service programs that non-citizens are being given now as they cross the border all have baked into them voter registration applications that are opt-out. In other words, if a migrant who is being helped by an NGO doesn't specifically say, and frankly, even if they do, it's all just words, they're going to end up on the voter rolls no matter which way you look at it. And it's intentional. Does it mean that migrant is the one that's going to go on to vote? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But it's been put in motion. States have no way to fight against this because they do not have access to the federal databases that are tracking the migrants. And so as these registrations come in, all they can do is say, we don't see the data to support it, but we have no way to get out of it. They're on the rolls, and they wouldn't dare remove them because that would absolutely be a dog whistle for lawfare. So they're sort of stuck. And, it takes a courageous Secretary of State to say, we're not playing this game. We're going to figure out solutions and be transparent about them. I don't see any state doing that currently. I hope that some stand up, and maybe I hope they're wrapping their heads around the problem now, because there is still time to address this. But you've got this problem, this burgeoning problem. What a lot of people don't know, however, is that the same Democrats that are always quick to say, oh, no, no non-citizen would vote because it's illegal, have already come together in the Senate and have written a plead to President Biden to ask for citizenship and amnesty for all of these non-citizens who've come across the border. If that takes hold, there's nothing to stop Biden from doing an executive order. And I know that seems like, why in the world? That would clearly set off a mutiny. But why wouldn't they? they're playing
Not
for
anything else.
control of. Yeah, they're playing for control of the free world. We saw what they did through COVID. This is just another moment of engineered chaos, and so we've got to be educated and eyes open about that. So that's one front. It's the most difficult of all fronts because there's nothing to prevent Biden from filing that executive order. But what we can do is, in anticipation of that, be ready at the state level to push back. And so that's a big focus of ours. And you can find it, for our purposes, we call it the 611 Project. You can find it on our website, where we've put together an entire outline of what's happening and a way for you to get involved to push back.
Okay. Glad to hear that. That's one. The other is incredibly, you say 24 million people registered to vote, that they're either registered inaccurately, invalid, or whatever. And that's a major problem, because 24 million may not sound like a lot in a country of over 300 million, but don't forget, 300 million people do not vote in America. And 24 million can be very significant, because it's probably larger than that, right?
It's no doubt it's larger than that. That is based just on invalid residency. People rightly should think that our voter rolls are accurate. How could they not be, right? I mean, we live in the age of Amazon one-click, where data is quickly resolved and corrected in near real time, in private markets, in industry as we know it, all day, every day. Private industry is out there resolving identity, residency, and citizenship in real time. It happens even in other agencies of government. But in our elections, we don't have that underpinning. And so our faith and our trust in the accuracy of those records has sadly been proven time and again to be misplaced. 24 million is on the low end. And what that amounts to, when you look at the actual voting population, is about 15% of the electorate, of the aggregate records nationwide. And 15% can swing an election all day long. I'm certainly not suggesting that every invalid record would be attached to somebody that would go on to use it to cast a vote. But you don't need a whole lot of fraud. You just need enough. You need enough in play that you can grab records where you need them, and just engineer a little fraud in the right places, and you can get the outcome you want. And so, all this to say that again, citizens have a role to play here, because the voter rolls are publicly available. You can look at the rolls and through the analysis of the rolls, looking at other commercially available databases, we can help find those ineligibilities, and citizens can then report them to their local jurisdiction, so that local jurisdictions can take action. And even if they don't take action, now the cat's out of the bag, because it's been made public. The very specific problems tied to very specific records are visible for all the world to see. And so that's what we've done with the project we have called IV3. And you can find that on our website under Engage. You can also find it's a standalone website, iv3.us. You can sign up to participate. We will give you access to your local voter rolls. We've already done the heavy lifting of evaluating ineligible records, but we serve up records one at a time to volunteers, so they can see exactly what we've identified. They can choose to challenge it. We help them through the process of how to challenge, we prepare the spreadsheet that they can then give to their county. Again, it's a movement of the people. If we don't take action, nothing will happen. We must force their hand in getting these rolls cleaned up. And it can be done. Another great thing about this project, it can be done before November. No doubt about it. Our rolls can be cleaned before November, but we've got to have help, and we've got to have people talking about it, more than talking about it, demanding it.
I hear you, and so just put it this way: it better be done before November, or we're
Amen.
done. So please, Catherine,
Amen.
Tell people why they should come on the website, why they should get involved with True the Vote, and how True the Vote. Because everybody, the one thing people always say, and I'm sure you hear this: you guys have a show, you have a microphone, you have a website, you have a voice. I'm just one little voice crying out in the wilderness. What can I do? But please tell them why they need to get involved with your organization, what you offer, and how True the Vote can help people in their neighborhood because that's where you have to make a difference. And every vote and every person counts.
Every vote and every person does count. And look, I get it. I understand why a person would think, I'm just one. What does it matter? I promise you, friends, if we stand together in this time, we can change the destiny of our country and point the arc of justice back towards liberty. That this is the time. If we don't stand, we will lose our country. And I'm not overstating the severity of the issue that we face. Every vote counts. Serving in your elections count. We provide through the Vote many ways that you can choose to engage. We have the IV3 project. We have another project called Scan, Check, Protect that allows you to just check your voter roll, just to see. Most people think that if when they move from state to state, that their voter record gets cleaned up. If they move out of a state, that certainly at some point their record gets cleaned. It doesn't. It sticks around. So we show you how to find that, how to correct that. We've got training on how to serve in elections, how to get plugged in. We talk about how to be an advocate in your community, how to pick up the phone and talk to your election administrator. Look, we're all just people, As it said, we all put our pants on one leg at a time. Pick up the phone and say, hey, county election administrator, I've never done this before, but I want to serve in my election. Where do I start? You can find a lot of that information on our website, but it's going to take you taking the step, just taking that first right step of saying, I choose in. What can I do? You're going to come up against a lot of roadblocks and a lot of, probably what will feel like, wasted time and uncertain outcomes, because just like anything in government, you may have to call several times, you may have to refile, but just stick with it. Put it in your brain that you're going to work in your local election. And then with groups like True the Vote, we'll help you, but it's going to take you to stay in it. Friends, if we don't do this, the government will not correct the problems that are coming our way in November. It will only happen through citizen engagement. And it's so important. And it takes all of us. We need representation in every single county in the country. It's the only way. So put aside the idea that you're just one person. You're part of a movement and you're here for such a time. We must do all that we can. And there are so many things we can do. Okay, we haven't been doing them in the past as a country. That is then, this is now. It's a new day. We've got to get involved. We can get the rolls clean. We can serve. We can hold our elected accountable. Doable, winnable, but we got to do it.
And people, here's how you know that Catherine is speaking truth to power. They don't try and smash you, the powers that be, unless you're doing something right. If you're just a little voice here or there, or just, and it's just echoing in the wind, but they went hard after her in this organization. And that lets you know she hit a nerve. So look, everybody, we have to get involved because it's now or never. If they win again,
That's right.
You're not going to want to live in this America. Catherine, I really appreciate you coming on and telling people about your organization and how to get involved and giving a passionate plea to help we the people save this country for God, family, country, and Constitution. Got to keep that Constitution up there. Before you leave, please tell people how they can reach you and anything you'd like to promote.
Absolutely. Well, you can find us at truethevote.org. That's sort of the heartbeat. And from there, you can go to engage. You can see all the projects that you can be a part of. You can find us on social media platforms. Please, if you go to our website, the first simple step is just join and to get our newsletter. That way we can stay in touch and you can continue to be kept apprised of the developments and the things that we're working on and the things that are being making headlines across the country. The thing I would leave you all with is, again, I understand that it feels maybe that you don't have a role in this and that it's just one person and maybe this is just one more pitch. My friends, it's just not the case this time. We've got to stand together. This is the call of our generation. So please stand for election integrity. If we stand together now, we can save this country.
Right. And Catherine, I do want to throw one more thing out because one of the reasons we're in this is we as Americans have had we've been so blessed that
That's right.
we've had an apathy to kick the can down the road. Politicians do it, but people do it. I remember a lot of people didn't think we'd survive Bill Clinton because they thought he was the Antichrist. We survived him. A lot of people, including me, when Obama won the second time, I was like throwing my hand up to God saying, gosh, boy, I think it's over. But we survived Obama. So everybody keeps saying, well, we keep surviving and surviving. People, we've kicked the can to the edge of the cliff. There's no more place to go. We push the can as far as the can can
That's
go
right.
without us going over the cliff. So please heed our warning. Go to True the Vote and let Catherine help you get involved to save America so we can continue to have the freedom and liberty that we've lived in. Catherine, thank you very much for coming on. You're always welcome to come back, and God bless you, your family, and the organization.
Thank you so much for having me. Keep doing what you do.
Thank you. There you have it, everybody. Catherine Engelbrecht. I want to thank Catherine Engelbrecht for coming on and making a passionate plea for we the people to get involved in the election process this time. It's not just about voting, people. We need to get involved. We need to make sure this election isn't stolen. We need to make sure that everything is fair. We need to make sure that election integrity is the name of the game in 2024. Because if it doesn't go down the right way, and I'm talking about a free, fair election, this country very much is going to be over. So please get involved. Do something. And as Catherine said, the first thing you need to do is start. Just start, make an effort to get involved in one area, and let's see where that takes you. This podcast is available at radioinfluence.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. It's also available, the video version, on YouTube and Rumble. In all cases, we ask that you please click that subscribe button so you can get all the episodes and leave a comment. Love to get a comment and a review. I love to talk to the people. So, give us a comment and let us know what you think about what you're seeing and what you're hearing. There's also an archive of all the audio versions of this podcast. You click that archive button and you'll find we've had more than 150 high-profile guests in 3 years. The likes of Ben Carson, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, Clay Clark, Carol Swain, Monica Crowley, Will Witt, Kevin Sorbo, Naomi Wolf. The list really, really goes on and on. There's just so many amazing people. Carrie Lake, Dr. Linda Lee Tarver. You could go on and on. It's so, there's just so many people there that I think you would like to hear. Yeah, Peter Navarro, poor Peter. Boy, the fact that he's in jail, not good. We got to do something about that. Mike Lindell, on and on. So please check that out for us. So that's it for now, everybody. So until the next time, this is Gary Benford, your host, saying, God bless you, God bless your families, and God bless America.